Well, welcome back, NBC, and we're in a series right now called The Next Chapter, Stepping into the Next Without Forgetting the Last. And this is a series where we started out talking about the fact that when we're looking at the past chapters of our life, we recognize that we have trials, we have pain, and the first Sunday that we met, we talked about how there's a lot of choices we have for who we're going to let train our pain, and that we should be allowing God to be the one who's going to train our pain to make us more and more like Jesus. Last week, Pastor Eric talked about how God does that through liquid situations, insecure, inadequate moments of our life where all we can do is trust God, and that is how God conditions our trust in Him. This week, we're going to be talking about lifers. Lifers, I call moments in life lifers that you're just never going to forget. Like, you fall off your bike and you're going to remember that. It may have happened when you were 8 years old, but you're going to remember that when you're 80. Or when somebody broke up with you, or when this took place, or that again, for anyone else, maybe they wouldn't remember that, but for you, it was a lifer. I asked NBC on NBC's Facebook page to just go ahead and share some of their lifers, and they did not disappoint. We had over 115 people who dropped comments, and here are a few of them. Kristen Yancey said, "That time I fell out of a second-story window." Now, as long as you didn't fall too hard, that's a lifer. You're going to remember that forever. We had Linda say, "That time when I hit a pole while taking my driver's exam, and the examiner made me drive to the police station to report the accident." She'll never forget that. That's a lifer. Linda Grayman said, "That time I went on vacation alone with my kids and got off the highway to get gas. I got back on the highway and realized I was missing my 6-year-old. Lifer. We have Carrie said, "That time on picture day in second grade." Okay, now hold on a sec. What could have possibly happened on picture? Like, honestly, my picture days were not lifers. I have forgotten every single one of them. But what could have possibly happened for Carrie on picture day that would be a lifer? That time on picture day in second grade, and I was wearing this super cool orange jumpsuit with rainbow trim. At recess that day, a boy named Dave ran by me and pushed me down onto the asphalt, ruining my super cool orange jumpsuit. For Carrie, that is a lifer. She'll remember that forever. Serena said, "That time the doctor laid my beautiful daughter on my chest, and I said over and over again, I'm a mom. With all I went through to get her here, I never thought I'd be a mom." Steve Halcomb said, "That time my mom raced home from school with her boys in the car. A tornado in the rear view window was dropping trees and power poles right behind us." That is a lifer. Jenny Judd said, "That time my 7th grade math teacher and I clashed heads, and I hated her. I truly hated her. She was not nice. Later in life, she became my elderly patient that needed my assistance to help her breathe. I told her she was my teacher, and she remembered me. I was able to tell her that me clashing with her all those years ago shaped me into trying harder and not giving up." Katie said, "The first time as a fire wife that I got the 'he's all right, but' call. He's okay, but call." Billy Chernlin said, "That time when I asked my girlfriend, now wife, 'Remember when I asked you out in high school?' 'You did?' she replied. 'I don't recall that at all. I don't remember that.'" For Billy, he's not going to be able to get over that. That's a lifer. Mark Alsop said, "Getting hit by a train in my truck 1 week before our wedding." Mark Alsop, for him, that is a lifer. You'll never forget that. Doug Shelton replied to that, "Mark, is that when you became a Packers fan?" These are all lifers. These are things that, again, whether it took place when you were 8 or 18 or 48 or 8 minutes ago, you're going to remember them all the way till 80 and beyond because they made an impression in your life. They're just monumental things that no matter how old you get are going to be in the database. Even as I was just sharing these, that probably conjured up some of your own lifer memories, things that are always going to be there. In fact, I want to encourage you, at home today, over lunch, or just at some point, talk with some of the people in your world about some of your lifers. What are things that have shaped you, or just maybe they didn't even shape you, they're just a memory that you know you're never, ever going to forget, because for whatever reason, they stuck in your memory banks. But if we're honest, all of life's lifer moments aren't positive. In fact, as permanent as lifers can be, there's another side of that we call scars. Scars are equally permanent, but they're permanent memories of past wounds. And we can do everything we can to bury that past pain, or we can try to compartmentalize it, but the truth is they're scars. They're ongoing reminders that come across the radar of our mind every once in a while and causes us to actually not know exactly what to do with these memories. But the great news is that within Scripture, the Apostle Paul talks about just that. He actually talks about what do we do with things like scars. He talks about that in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 when he's addressing this baby Christian church in Corinth and saying this, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort." One of the great things we see here is that before we get any deeper into the text, he's setting the table by saying the God that we follow, the God who is the one who's over us, is not just this God of wrath or this God of judgment and justice. He's actually a God of compassion. That's one of his descriptors. Before Paul says anything further, he says he's the God of compassion and the God of all comfort. I want to just encourage you, before we go any further, if you're someone who has a past scar, and it's a lifer, it's a past pain, and you haven't brought that to him, do you realize that he wants you to do that? He wants to comfort you. He wants to come alongside you in this. He doesn't want you just to try to manage this on your own. He actually wants to be the God of compassion and the God of all comfort, including yours. If you haven't done that, or you're going through something right now that you've been managing the pain all by yourself, today, bring that issue, that past pain, that scar before him and say, God, I need your brand of comfort to walk alongside me in this, because even though this took place so long ago, I'm still struggling with the pain from that moment. Now, Paul doesn't end here. He continues on by saying this. He says, the God of all comfort who comforts us in all our troubles, not just some of our troubles, all of them. This God of compassion, this God of comfort, he comforts us in all of our troubles. But Paul doesn't put a period at the end of the sentence there. He actually adds to it this, so that. Hold on a second. I didn't know there was a so that. I thought that God comforts us because he loves us. God comforts us because we're his kids and he just wants to do something nice for us. And as much as that's true, that's not the whole truth. There's more to it. That's not the truth by a long shot. The God who comforts us in all of our troubles has an additional purpose in his healing comfort for us. So that, the God who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves received from God. So why does God comfort us? Because he loves us, yes, but that's not the end of the story. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves received from God. And this is just the amazing thing that we have as Christians. We have a God who comforts us, and we can thank him for that, but we have an additional purpose, that our scars are not just intended to be healed. Our pain is not just intended to go away. It's intended to be used to help and comfort others. In fact, I'd put it this way. The most hurtful story from your past, the scar, the lifer that you can't shake, you didn't choose it. You do have a choice to use it, however. The most hurtful story from your past can be the most helpful story for their present. You went through something back then that had no point in that moment outside of hurting you, but all of a sudden you are brought into the realization that God has a deeper purpose, and part of that purpose is to help others. Don't bury your past pain. Use it for someone else's good. So how do we do this? How can I actually use the lifer in my lives, the scars, the deeper pains, to be used to help someone else? Well, first off, identify them. Just again, as we've been conjuring up some of those funny stories from our past, chances are you probably did think about some of the ones that were painful, that shaped you in a negative way, that were scarring in some way, shape, or form. Things that people said to you, things that people did to you, or things that even you did that's a painful scar from the past, and all you thought was the best thing you could do is heal from it and move on. And now all of a sudden you're brought into the reality that possibly there's more to it. Identify the painful moments from your past that you can't shake, and be able to actually go through and figure out how God can use them. Paul did this. Paul, when he was identifying his life stories, the lifers in his life, the things that shaped him, he brings up the fact that he grew up mega religious. He had a mega religious upbringing. Like, he wasn't just into faith. He was a fanatic. He was a fanatic for his faith to the point that he wasn't just judgmental. He was judge, jury, and executioner. Like, he actually executed people who disagreed with him. That's how intense he was. Now, Paul had every incentive to bury that. Hey, I'm a Christian. My past is my past. I don't need to bring up my painful parts. But he does. He brings up the fact that this was a key part of his life, or he can't shake it. It's not the central reality of his life, but it's part of his life that could be part of his life or story. Secondly, he had a medical condition that wouldn't go away. He keeps on saying that there's this pain that he's got or this malady that he has that he wishes God would take from him, but God isn't. That's something that he could just overlook, or he could kind of put on a good face and give the impression that, look, I'm a spiritual person, I'm following Jesus, and my life is perfect. But he doesn't. He actually surfaces the painful reality that this medical condition won't go away. Some people think that Paul was not talking about a specific medical issue, but a specific person that was just a pain in his life, and they wouldn't go away. But regardless, he's surfacing the fact, this is a struggle that I have and that I've had, and he doesn't bury it, he uses it. He also finishes up by talking about multiple death threats against him. Again, the Bible could have censored that out. The Bible could have painted Paul as just this victorious person that was just impenetrable to any type of pain. But it doesn't. Paul actually brings up these unforgettable things that he will remember to the day that he dies, the fact that these are part of his story. And when I asked people to share on NBC's Facebook page, some of you shared those as well. Things that were painful, like Brandon talking about the day that his brother died. That was something that registered for him as a painful moment. He will never forget that for the rest of his life. Sarah had a painful moment that actually had a positive end, but she was honest about that as well. She said, that time in 5th grade, when I met my dad for the first time, he asked if he could hug me. I said no, but he did anyway. I'm so glad he did. All these years later, we have the best bond. A painful part of your past that, again, you could just kind of leave in your past. But Sarah shared that. We have Natalie sharing the time that I held my mom's hand when she died. Now, these are very personal moments, but you know what? Every person goes through pain. And your pain, as personal as it is something that can be shared with someone else who can all of a sudden feel that they also, as they're going through a current lifer, can experience the peace that comes from the fact that they know they're not alone. You also went through something like that in your past. Regardless of the fact that this is a scar, it does not have to stay a scar. That doesn't have to be the end of the road. It doesn't have to be a dead end or a cul-de-sac of your pain. It actually could open up doors to be a deeper, more meaningful, and more helpful part of your story. Which leads you to the decision that you have, once you've identified, once you've surfaced those lifer stories, those scars, you have a choice. And this passage is advocating for this choice, to commit to letting God use your life or story to comfort others whenever he wants to. To commit to letting God use your life or story to comfort others whenever he wants to. The way that looks is simply you saying, God, this is something I've brought to you for comfort, or I've sensed your comfort in it. I have peace from you. I don't know when I'm going to be able to share this. I don't know with whom I'm going to share this with, but I am open to share this story. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know with whom, but I'm making the decision that if God wants to use this painful scar from my past to help comfort someone else, I am going to be open to that. And that's really what this passage is advocating for. And if that's you, here's a couple of things that you should avoid that a lot of people who've made this decision with great motivation have fallen into and as a result not been comforting. They've been one of these people. First off, the pain prophet. The pain prophet is someone who actually is trying to do their best to comfort you, but they're doing so by feeling like they are communicating like they've got God's mobile number or something. They know exactly why you're going through pain, and they know exactly what your pain is for. What's the outcome? And the pain prophet sounds like they're just an expert in your pain, and not only that, religiously so. That, as great a motivation as it is not helpful. Don't be the pain prophet. Also, don't be the one-upper. All of us have been in conversations with someone where we could see the person that we're talking to, and in the corners of their eyes and in the corners of their mouth, they start to you could tell that the story you're telling is going right over their head because they've got a better story that they're going to unload on you as soon as you shut up. That's the one-upper. Well, the one-uppers are in the comfort world as well. And the way that they try to comfort you is you express a pain. You finally have gotten to the point of being vulnerable about your pain, something you're going through. And what they do to try to comfort you is to one-up you. Oh, you think that's bad? I had something far worse than that. I went through something infinitely more painful than that. You shouldn't feel pain because I went through something even harder and I made it through on my own power. That is not comforting. It's not helpful. Don't be a one-upper with regard to someone's pain. And also don't be the silent partner. The silent partner is someone who recognizes that God has used In your past, in one's past, he's used himself to comfort you. He's brought you through it. But when it comes to someone else's pain is someone else's problem. It's their business, and I don't want to mess it up by saying something wrong, and so I'm going to choose just to be a good listener. I'm just going to listen. Maybe that's the best thing I can do. And as important as it is to listen, and it is so important to listen, if you have something that you can share to relate to them, to not do that isn't caring for them. It's not being a comforter. You're actually shortchanging them from the reality you have in your past. Sometimes we fall into being a silent partner because we don't want to resurface the story from our past. It's embarrassing or it's hurtful, and we're afraid that if we resurface it to comfort this person, it's going to cause us pain all over again. That's the silent partner. They choose instead to be just the listener, just the silent person. And Paul is saying we have something more to offer than that. Now, where this person says too little, this next person, they say way too much. The pain parader is a person that overshares. They've become comfortable not hiding their pain. They've been secure about the fact that this painful event happened. But now they've let the pendulum swing really hard to the opposite side, to the point that they're parading their pain and oversharing with everyone they talk to. In fact, if you're around one of these people, you know all of their pain because they've shared it not only with you, but everyone in your world. The pain parader gets off step because what they're trying to do is to communicate the freedom they have, perhaps the comfort from God that they've experienced, but they're oversharing their pain, sending the message that their past pain is the most important part of their story. It's the most interesting aspect of their identity, and it's not. Your pain is not the most important part of your story or the most important part of your identity. If you're a Christian, the most important part of your identity is Christ, who has walked with you through your pain, who has given you identity that supersedes your pain. He's able to redeem your pain, but your pain is not the whole of your story. You have much more interesting and important parts of your identity, and they all fall within Christ. That's the pain parader. Now, the cool thing is that as we're walking out of that, we can actually figure out how to not only avoid those things, but what we're supposed to do. And the key thing of what we're supposed to do is number 3, to share humbly the real hero. The real hero that's in our story. So we share humbly with the real hero highlighted in our story. It's not our power to get through something. It's not our pain that's the highlight. It's the hero that has comforted us in the midst of our pain, bringing us through our pain. And Paul does that later on in this very book. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he talks about that. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay. Paul talks about us as humans as jars of clay. We're brittle, we're super inadequate, we're fragile people, but we've got a treasure inside of us, and this is what it is. We have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. How are we able to get through our pain? How are we able to get through the life or scars that we can't erase? Well, it's through his all-surpassing power, not our own. We're not pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps in this life. We're resting on his absolute power to bring us through. And then he starts to just like buckshot list down different problems he's been in, but how God has come through. And he just does so by summarizing them this way. We are hard-pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. We're persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. In other words, we've got stuff going all around us and it feels chaotic. I don't know how to hold it together, but I'm not crushed by it. I've got all this pressure. And in the midst of the pressure, I'm not being crushed because of his power. I'm perplexed. I'm super confused. I just don't understand why, but I'm not in despair because of it. My confusion or my lack of answers isn't bringing despair because I'm so powerful, because I'm so strong and mature. No, because God is, and I'm resting on him. I'm persecuted, but I'm not abandoned. I am not alone in this. I'm struck down, but not destroyed. In thinking through this whole thing, I just wrapped it up this way by saying that your potential in being comforting is more than merely listening and more than merely relating. Your greatest help will be by connecting the one you comfort to the one who comforted you. The greatest help that you have in comforting someone else is connecting the one you comfort to the one who comforted you. When you make Jesus the hero of the story, when the pain is not the end, or even how you got through it is not the end, but the fact that God was there, that God still is there, that you're trusting him, all of a sudden, you've brought to the person who's hurting the most important reality about pain that they can possibly know. Number one, that you are someone that has experienced pain, but even greater than that, you know the one who's walked with you through it. Scars are something that we did not choose, but they are something that we can choose to use to help someone else. Paul is advocating for that. And we as a people recognize this, we really do truly realize that the most hurtful story from our past, the scars, the lifers, the things that we didn't choose, can be the most helpful story for their present. As a church, as we're in this pandemic where a lot of our life is stripped down and shut down and dialed back, let's not go into the next chapter without evaluating the chapters that have led up to this point, that have included quite a bit of scarring, quite a bit of pain, that are lifers. We can't choose to get over that. We can't choose to get those out of our life. They're there forever. But we can choose whether or not we are going to allow those to be comforting to someone else. We're going to go ahead and hand this back on over to Pastor Jason to wrap up the service right now.